American media dubbed them the Ken and Barbie killers. Paul Kenneth Bernardo, who is also the Scarborough rapist, and his wife are Canada's most notorious serial killing couple. To say Paul's upbringing was troubled probably wouldn't surprise anyone. Paul's father was charged with sexually abusing one of his children, which he apparently did in front of the other kids. Paul's mother was withdrawn with mental health issues of her own, dysfunction all over the place. Like other serial killers, Paul presented a different picture to the world, charming, active, successful, but underneath, he was fascinated with fire and had dark, sick fantasies, including breeding girls that he would later rape. The trouble would show itself early. He referred to his mother with slurs. He burned all of the property belonging to his first girlfriend that he could get his hands on. He tried to dominate the females in his life. He liked to humiliate women who went on dates with him publicly and privately. He was abusive and threatening and stalkerish. He found a companion in all of that, though, someone who would encourage him, become his partner in crime, serve up her own sister to appease him, Karla Homolka. From 1987, the year he met Homolka, to 1990, the Toronto suburb of Scarborough was rocked with a series of rapes and attempted rapes, mostly but not always of young women and teenage girls traveling by bus. In fact, the Scarborough rapist would change the way the bus system operated for most of Toronto. The TTC started the Blue Line buses, and women traveling on the buses from sundown to sunrise could ask to be dropped off at any point along the route, not only at bus stops. Bernardo's police sketch was plastered everywhere, in buses, on subways, on streetcars, and in the media. That is, once police were able to make a composite. Police surveillance of bus stops began and patrols increased. Nonetheless, he attempted or tried to rape 19 women, and probably well more than 30 in those years. Most were teenagers. Victims are protected from being identified, and we would not identify them without their permission in any event. All of their cases are important, but we'll just review a few here just to give you a picture of Bernardo's modus operandi. The climate in Scarborough for women, police involvement, and how he was able to escape capture for 3 full years. His first 2 known victims were raped in their parents' yards or near their parents' homes. There were other victims who were close to home or in their own yards as well. Others were dragged into bushes. One was in her home, and a mother interrupted the attack. Another man, Anthony Hannemeyer, was wrongfully convicted of that attack and served 16 months for it, but was later exonerated after Bernardo confessed to it. He threatened many of his victims with a knife. Some women fought back, foiling the bastard rapist, and for fighting back, at least one was stabbed, causing serious but not life-threatening injuries. An officer nearly captured him once, but he was able to run away and escape. It was one of his later victims, in May 1990, who would have such a vivid recollection of her attacker that police were able to obtain a composite. After the first 5 attacks, Toronto Police Services issued a public warning to women in Scarborough who were traveling alone at night. After the 11th attack, a task force was assembled to capture the rapist. The composite was so good that tips came pouring in, several of them pointing directly to Bernardo, who was interviewed and released pending DNA analysis, which took 2 long, terrible years. In those intervening years, Bernardo and Homolka would kill at least 3 people. Homolka was never charged in respect of any of the Scarborough rapes, though there is some evidence that she may have assisted and definitely encouraged Bernardo. By December 1990, Bernardo and Homolka graduated to murder. They would begin with the horrific killing of Homolka's younger sister, Tammy. Bernardo was obsessed with the teen, going into her room and masturbating as she slept, peering through her window, a window Homolka would break so that Bernardo could sneak into the room. She drugged her sister with Valium that first time and watched while Bernardo raped her sister. Then on December 23, 1990, Homolka stole some anesthetic from a clinic where she worked and drugged Tammy again. They undressed her and videotaped themselves raping her. When she began to vomit, they called 911, dressed her, and made up a story, which was initially bought by authorities, that Tammy died after choking on vomit after a night of drinking. They bought the story even though Bernardo and Homolka were caught doing laundry and vacuuming in the middle of the night, despite the chemical burn on Tammy's face, which should have told authorities that there was more than alcohol in that vomit. They moved out of Homolka's home, allegedly to allow Homolka's parents to grieve Tammy. More likely, it was to prevent Homolka's family from realizing what was happening. After Tammy died, Homolka would dress like her, and the pair would videotape themselves having sex while Homolka pretended to be Tammy. Out of respect for the parents of their other victims, who have been through enough and now face the ordeal of Bernardo's parole hearings, we will keep the horrific details to a minimum. One doesn't need all the details to understand just how horrific the experiences their daughters went through were. 6 months after killing Tammy, they would kill Leslie Mahaffey. Again, the whole affair, the rape and torture, was videotaped. They left Leslie in the basement while they hosted a dinner party for Homolka's family. This time, they encased her body parts in concrete and tried to dispose of them in a lake. She was discovered on the day of Bernardo and Homolka's wedding. Nearly a year later, they would abduct, sexually assault, torture, and murder Kristen French in St. Catharines, Ontario. They dumped her naked body in a ditch in Burlington, Ontario, close to Leslie's final resting place. They washed her body and cut her hair, hoping that would prevent identification. There may have been a third murder from the summer of 1990, that of 22-year-old Elizabeth Bain, who was killed somewhere near the Colonel Danforth Park. Bernardo had been active in that area, confessing to at least 8 attacks in and around the park. Another man was convicted of this murder, but later, at a retrial, he was found not guilty. Bernardo had been questioned about the Bain murder and denied having done it, though he added that, quote, "The 800-pound gorilla in the room is that it is a life to 25 sentence," end quote. By the time he made that statement, he had served 22 years in prison for 2 first-degree murders and 2 aggravated sexual assaults. He's a dangerous offender, so likely never will be released. But he's been able to seek parole since 2008 by petitioning a jury under Canada's Faint Hope law. So far, any applications he has made have been denied. If he confessed to the Bain murder, another 25 years could be added to his sentence, and his parole eligibility date would be reset. So, at this point, he's unlikely to confess. Therefore, if anyone has any information about the murder of Elizabeth Bain, the whereabouts and doings of Bernardo, or other information that might help in this case, please contact the Toronto Police Service or Crime Stoppers and provide that information. Elizabeth was 22, and she disappeared on June 19, 1990. She is presumed to be dead by homicide. She was going to the University of Toronto Scarborough campus to check the tennis schedule there, and on the 22nd, her car was found with a large blood stain in the back seat. It may be a bit of a mess of a case, but Elizabeth and her family deserve answers and justice if they are able to attain that. Another victim on the tapes was referred to as January Girl by both Bernardo and Homolka. She was abducted and raped during the weekend of January 12, 1991, and then dropped off on a deserted road near Lake Gibson. A few months later in April, Bernardo was with the likely assistance of Homolka, abducted and raped a 14-year-old girl near the rowing club where she had been training. In June and August 1991, they drugged and raped the same girl, 15, and referred to as Jane Doe. When she began to vomit and stopped breathing, Homolka called 911, but called off the ambulance after the couple got her breathing again. They may have also raped a woman in Hawaii in 1991 during their honeymoon. Both officials in Canada and the U.S. expressed their belief that Bernardo is responsible for the rape. To convict Bernardo, they had to make a deal with the devil. The videotapes that would provide evidence of his vicious crimes were well hidden in the couple's home in St. Catharines. Police were unable to locate them. Bernardo would send in a lawyer to gather them, Ken Murray, and Murray would hide them from authorities. It was only after Bernardo retained another lawyer that they were turned over. In the meantime, a deal was done with Homolka to have her plea to 2 manslaughters in exchange for testimony against Bernardo. Disclosure of the deal drew outrage, to say the least, from the public. Homolka, also known as Karla Leanne Teal, and Leanne Bordelais, served her time, 12 years, and was released. She's changed her name and location more than once and generally avoids the spotlight. She divorced Bernardo in 1994 and is now married with 3 children. After his conviction, Bernardo confessed to at least 10 other sexual assaults, mostly from 1986. He was declared a dangerous offender, which means he's serving an indeterminate sentence, likely for the remainder of his days. He can only be released if there is a determination that he can be controlled in the community, a determination which is unlikely given his psychiatric assessments. He is currently 59 years old. As a direct result of Bernardo and Homolka's crimes, Ontario's police services became the one group in the world to now have a fully computerized case management network to help prevent investigations like these from falling through the cracks. The network is called Major Crime Management and uses software called PowerCase and has had a number of successes since its implementation. As a result of Homolka's case, a law was fast-tracked through Canadian Parliament to prevent offenders like her from seeking pardons for their offenses. Thank you for listening, and until next Thursday, have a great week. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.